Leave me a hold for mine.
Where am I supposed to go?
Right in front of all these.
Right here. Wow.
Just don't look at the camera.
Yeah, that would be hard all at once. Is everybody ready? Move closer to the mics. Okay. All right. The murder of baby Antonio demands justice. However unpleasant, the defense investigation of this case, unlike that of the state, followed the evidence wherever it led. We understand the state tried this case in the manner they believed was necessary to obtain a conviction. But there were no winners in the courtroom today. While the defense has the utmost respect for the court, we take exception to critical evidence being withheld from the jury, depriving our client of a fair trial. We filed numerous Brady motions demanding that the state turn over exculpatory evidence. Time will tell whether, as the Elkins family believes, the state withheld evidence that would have led to a very different verdict. Mr. Elkins intends to file an appeal. Marky Elkins and his family are confident that he will receive another trial in which he will be able to present fully his defense. Mr. Elkins will eventually be exonerated. The defense team has great appreciation for the Glynn County and City of Brunswick police departments. These overworked and underpaid men and women put their lives on the line every day protecting our community. However, it is the duty of defense counsel during trial to point out mistakes and omissions during the course of any investigation. We would like to thank the people, Sheriff's Department, and courts of Cobb County, Court Administrator Tom Sharon, the Clerk of Court, Rebecca Keaton, for their professionalism and graciousness in the trial of this difficult case. We also wish to thank local attorneys Jim Berry, Dennis O'Brien, and Kim Fry for their counsel, assistance, and support. I'd also like to thank the other members of our defense team, Chief Assistant Public Defender Jonathan Lockwood, Elizabeth Wood, Chanel Booker, Whitney Shirk, Rob Beckwith, J.D. Blevins, Jason Nix, and I'm sure I'm leaving somebody out, and I apologize. But our folks, very, very young legal team, some literally started the trial on their first day on the job. At least one of our lawyers examined their first witness today. We're very grateful for the hundreds of hours of time that they volunteered above and beyond their normal work representing the indigent defendants in Glynn County, Georgia. And I'm so proud and humbled to have been able to work with them in this trial.
Without going through everything all over again, what evidence do you think this jury should have seen that they did not have the opportunity to see?
I think the record shows that Ashley Glassy was an important witness in this case and had critical testimony that was ruled inadmissible. We understand the ruling of the court and we respect it. Nevertheless, we disagree with it, and that will certainly be an issue on appeal. There was the testimony of several witnesses and proffers from Sandra Holboy and Miss Clark, who will undoubtedly be unhappy that I forgot her first name, who traveled here voluntarily so that Mr. Elkins could receive a fair trial. And again, while we respect the ruling of the court, we disagree with it. We're confident had the jurors heard all of the testimony of these witnesses and other witnesses whose testimony was disallowed, that the verdict would have been very different.
What's your impression of the fact that you had a juror who apparently had some problems at work and may have even lost her job as a result? And what the impact of that on the trial?
Well, we filed a motion for new trial because we believe it had an impact on the trial. At the same time, we'd like to respect the privacy of the jurors. The jurors worked very hard. Those of you who were in the courtroom during the trial could see the jurors taking notes diligently throughout the trial. They were listening attentively up to the last witness who testified on the 8th day of evidence. So while we are disappointed with the jury's verdict, we have the utmost respect for it and for the members thereof. And it would be inappropriate at this time to discuss individual problems and private issues that those jurors had.
You have a life question that these weren't allowed to go down. How frustrating was that for you, and how did it change your case?
Well, you know, anytime you don't get evidence in that you believe you want for your case, it's disappointing. But one of the things that we do when we go to law school is we learn to be professionals. And whether the rulings go our way or not, it's our duty to go forward on behalf of our client and present the case as best we can. As those of you who were in the courtroom know, the evidence pointed in many different directions other than Mr. Elkins. And whether all of that evidence was presented, nevertheless, we were able to get some of that evidence before the jury. We just regret that it turned out to be insufficient.
The 2 bullets found in his pocket when he was arrested.
I'm sorry, sir, I can't hear you.
How do you overcome the evidence of the bullets being in his pocket when the time of his arrest, the Marquis?
The bullets in his pocket?
Yeah, when they made the arrest.
If you were a young man living in a high drug, high crime area, you might view things differently than we all do living in suburbia, you know, in our little McMansions or wherever we are. Some of us haven't quite aspired there yet. But nevertheless, Marquis Elkins lives in a very different world than we do, a dark world, a frightening place. You know, I don't, you know, the Second Amendment applies to everyone, not just folks who watch Fox News.
Has Mr. Elkins said anything after the verdict?
Who do you think killed this baby?
Any reaction from him?
All right, so, I'm sorry.
Any reaction from Mr. Elkins to you after the verdict was read? Has he said anything?
Look, I'm going to try and be helpful in the time that we have, but you've got to remember now, we've got a motion for new trial that'll be filed shortly in an appeal, and we fully expect to be trying this case again. With all due respect to the district attorney and the police, the last thing we want to do out here is be discussing trial strategy for this trial, which might well end up being issues in the next trial. So while you would like to have information, there's just a lot of things we're just not going to be able to share. You know, we don't want to necessarily show our hand as to how the defense may proceed in the event of a retrial.
Personal reaction, his personal reaction, Marquis?
I am not going to comment on Mr. Elkins' statements or reactions. I just don't think that would be fair to him or his family.
You took issue with the makeup of the jury at the beginning of trial.
I'm sorry?
You took issue with the makeup of the jury at the beginning of trial. How do you think that played a role in the verdict?
I can't speculate what went on in the jury room, but what I can say is if you were a 17-year-old black man from Brunswick, Georgia, and you were expecting a trial of your peers, and 12 white people showed up to try your case, however intelligent, however hardworking, and however impartial, you could understand why Mr. Elkins would be concerned and his family would be concerned. I don't mean to suggest for a second that these jurors didn't give this case all the attention that it deserved, and I have no doubt that they searched their souls and their consciences deeply before rendering their verdict. I'm sure it was a difficult thing for all of them in this case. Nevertheless, from Mr. Elkins' perspective, that was not the trial of a jury of his peers, at least the way I can explain it to a 17-year-old.
You called a number of the witnesses liars and thieves, and why were you not able to convince jurors of that, of their lack of credibility?
You'd have to ask the jurors. I don't know if it's a lack of persuasive power on my part. Maybe I wasn't speaking loud enough. Maybe we asked the questions too quickly. I don't know, you know. But in a case like this, where so many witnesses have their own agendas and their own histories and their own issues, and where so many people, you know, have their own reasons to say less than the truth or to slant the testimony, there's no more difficult job for a jury in those circumstances than to try and sort through all of those different matters to reach the truth. And I'm not going to question the thought process of the jury that reached their conclusions.
What do you think about the speed at which the jury reached its verdict?
I don't put a lot of stock in that. You know, you can have juries out for days, you can have juries out for 5 minutes.
Were you surprised at the speed?
Not necessarily. You know, these people have been sitting here for nearly 2 weeks now. They've had 8 nights or 7 nights to think about the evidence each day. Although they may only have started their deliberations this afternoon, they undoubtedly had formed opinions. Well, I won't say they formed opinions, that might not be the right word for it, but they certainly had time to ponder the evidence before their deliberations began.
What type of sentence is he looking at?
A very long sentence.
I mean, would it be life without parole?
It's going to be life plus. Whether he's eligible for parole probably will be something we'll discuss at the sentencing hearing. We may not agree with the state's position on that, But the bottom line, he has been found guilty of malice murder. He's looking at a life sentence. He would not be able to get out of jail on a life sentence without clemency or parole or some other relief. He's probably looking at a very, very long time in prison. He may well die in prison, regardless of whether he's eligible for parole. There is no more serious matter than a murder case.
Thanks very much.
Have I covered everybody?
How do you think him being tried with his mother affected the outcome of the case? Did it distract from your case, or how did that play a role?
The only comment I would make about its role is if it would be an issue for appeal, we'll include it. And if not, then we probably won't. You'll have to ask the district attorney why she wanted to try this mother. Well, you can ask, but I'm not going to get into plea discussions.
Sentencing back home?
Yes, sentencing will be in Glenn County.
No time frame for that yet.
Could be next week, could be next month. That depends on the schedule of the court, and he's a very, very busy judge. All right, thank you.
Thanks a lot.
I'd rather do it all at once than leave somebody out. Yeah. Thanks a lot, Carol. I guess. Okay, well, I look forward to it. Me and your girlfriend. You know what? I don't even know. I just found out. So. All right.
You said overbid. I was like,
Okay, so that would be helpful.
Well, let me find out if they're willing to do that.
Okay.
You know, he's got this nasty man facade deep down.
throw him all the camera equipment and tell him to set it up.
So I got to
Go back up. We should kind of stay in position. We can go back up.
I live in Spain. Oh yeah. Am I